Hello, everyone. Welcome to Midweek Gaming. I'm Nick on the side of the comments, of course, Justin. And this is interesting. Marathon had stuff happen recently. Let me just give you some clarity. Have we really talked much about Marathon? I mean, we've had
We've
some other
talked a
things on this
little
channel
bit about
before.
Marathon. We go back and forth when it comes to Bungie. We talk about Destiny, we talk about Marathon, but we overall when we're talking about Bungie, we talk about both.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? When it comes to this stuff like that, we've avoided talking about the stuff just because there's some better news on the table, and it's just, I don't know, Bungie's
It's
just, every time
Bungie's
it's
in a
just, they
spot
did
right
something stupid.
now. Bungie's in a spot right now where you're like you kind of feel bad talking about it because you already know things are not good at all.
Plus, I mean, at the end of the day, there's like 101 different people talking about this as well. So if we add our voices in, nothing new will come out of this. But hey, here we are anyway.
It
Because
is
I
news and
honestly,
it is worth taking note at this point.
yeah, and I honestly feel like at this point we should say something, considering how much we covered Bungie and Destiny, and well,
We did a
sometimes
lot in
occasionally
the
Marathon
past, so
channel.
it kind of seems wrong to not do like cover this new stuff going on right now.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard, let me just kind of run you down, right? So Marathon, not exactly been doing hot in terms of well anything really. And the reception has been lukewarm, and I think that's a lot of people would agree, putting it kindly when it comes to the game. A lot of people say like, who wants this? I think we have covered in the past, kind of a whole list of why potentially this was not the greatest idea in terms of a game and game direction to go in, but that's neither here nor there. Then we got into more recent news. This is big because this is kind of what turned the situation from bad to, oh my lord. This has to do with the art theft involving Anti-Real. Now, if you don't know Anti-Real, they're a graphic artist who does a bunch of shit. They've been doing it for many, many years, as far as I'm aware. And yeah, story goes, they've just had their entire, like a good chunk of their art just lifted and put into the game.
Yep.
If you go throughout the promotional material, the UI, there's like a bunch of examples floating around, including their own logo, which I think is even in the UI itself, which is just flipped upside down. And yeah, Real just pointed this out, and Bungie's no stranger to when it comes to allegations of art theft. I mean, recently they've been bashed by over on the Destiny side for, lifting the whole Red War campaign. That might go somewhere, that might not. A while ago, they were bashed for lifting a bit of concept art involving a witness statue. That, I don't know if that went anywhere. I don't remember that one. But yeah, they're no stranger to art theft, but in this case, this not only had a lot of legs to it, but also was very prevalent. This isn't just, an art piece here or a picture there that got lifted. This is a whole bunch of stuff that just got put into the game. And yeah, it was pretty pervasive. Marathon's development team, to their credit, or not to their credit, depending on how you want to go to it, I don't know, did an apology video that actually, kind of covered it. They're like, we're seeing it, we're addressing it. They pinned it on, you might hear my clock in the background, excuse me. One employee that apparently like was on a graphics sheet, I think they called it, and that just kind of went through. I don't know about you, the idea that, just one employee had a graphic sheet and that just kind of got transferred into the game one-to-one, I don't know. There's actually a video we have down below from Upper Echelon who did a thing that says that because Bungie contracted a bunch of people outside, I can't remember what the contractor company was called in terms of artists, but they might have was been the result of the lifting stuff because fun fact, Bungie, or Marathon's developers, let's say specifically, a lot of the art people in Marathon actually follow Anti-Real and have been for a while, including the art director, interestingly enough. And so, like I said, it is kind of funny to see Anti-Real stuff just kind of get lifted wholesale into Marathon when a good chunk of the Marathon art team, including the game designer, the art director, I should say, follow you on Twitter, X, whatever it is, or I think it's X. But yeah, I've been following you for a very long time, so funny enough, actually, Anti-Real actually came out, weirdly enough, to kind of almost put a final nail in this coffin of allegation. It's not even allegation at this point, it's just true. Where they stated that they actually hit the lost meme throughout their work for years, and nobody noticed. Why does this is important? I won't, tell you on the specifics on what exactly the lost meme is. Just know that it's a bit of internet culture that, has been for a very long time, from, I think, like the 08 days, somewhere around there. And so it's a bit of internet culture, right? Well, the meme that represents this internet culture was was hidden by Anti-Real's own mission in their art for a long time, and again, no one noticed. Why again is this important? Well, because the same symbol that represents the Lost meme is also in the game. And at the time, everyone was like, oh my goodness, Marathon is, referencing internet culture, so cool of them. But now looking back on all of it, considering they lifted Anti-Real's work, and Anti-Real in the past has even gone on record saying that they put Lost in their work, it's just, combine that with the Lost stuff, you just kind of wonder. Going back to the whole allegations of it being, one person, kind of one rogue employee that in their own words doesn't work at Bungie anymore, part of a graphic texture pack, I think it was, that, everyone just kind of signed off on, is both hard to believe in my opinion and just downright weird because, again, this is all over both their promotional material, their UI, their stuff, the animations. It feels way more than just beyond a texture pack. And even then, right, you'd expect the, art director and a bunch of other suits to sign off on it and just look at it and be like, yep, this looks original, this looks original. So either two things happen. Either A, they're lying through their teeth, or B, there is gross incompetence going on here because everyone looked at this and said, looks fine.
Not fine.
Yeah, and especially, like I said, because the art director and the team, a good chunk of them at least, or a lot of them, follow Anti-Real. So they should know what her art looks like, or at least you would presume they know what her art looks like, or their art, I think it's her, it doesn't matter. Their art looks like, right? So, like I said, the fact that they looked at all of this and didn't see a connection at all, maybe they just didn't remember, which, and then they signed off on it, again, I don't know, like I said, it's either gross incompetence or just straight up lying, you pick your poison. Me, I'm more of a subscriber to A than B, but with Bungie, it wouldn't surprise me if it's actually B rather than A. Gross incompetence being what it is,
Patch me in and I'll get that door
Which
open
brings
again.
us to more modern stuff. There was actually a video that a industry expert did, also linked down in the comments below, by Laura Fryer. She has actually worked with on contract for Bungie before. She's done a lot of work in the industry herself. She's something of an industry expert when it comes to these things. And she actually gave her own 2 cents on all of this and surrounding Marathon, including the scandal and stuff like that, and basically said that, just given everything, at least I think it included scandal. I might be wrong. Correct me in the description if I am. I wouldn't be the first time, right? And basically said, if Bungie, or Sony, I would say, if Sony cares about Bungie and wants to see this company, survive, given everything that has happened, they will delay Marathon. Because up until the point of the more recent events, which we'll get into, Marathon was slated to be released in September. If memory serves, September, August. Because of how thorough all of this was, it would take way, more time to scrub all of this and just kind of figure out what to do before September happens. And so, like I said, the kind of overall result was, they have to delay it, or they should delay it if they want to see better results than what they're probably going to get. And I guess Bungie or Sony or one of the two heard it because in the most recent bit of news, Bungie has announced that Marathon is being delayed indefinitely. Yay, I think? Again, it's weird because... yeah, it's not a good thing from Bungie or Sony's perspective because Sony, I think, was banking on this being something, at the very least, in terms of profitability. Bungie needs it for the sake of, well, just in general. They seem hell-bent on getting out the door at this point. And, like I said, they've delayed it indefinitely. Word is that they'll be telling us more roundabout fall, when the game was originally slated to be released, and they'll kind of reevaluate from there and kind of give us more details at that point. But until then, Marathon has been put on hold indefinitely. So yeah, that's kind of where we are right now when it comes to Marathon in general, There's a massive art scandal that has surrounded it. Anti-Real is, openly getting compensated for all that lifted assets, really. And, yeah, the game's now been delayed indefinitely, which, all of this on top of a game that was already being criticized as looking like, well, not looking like, but feeling like the next Concord in that it doesn't really look inspired, nobody really wants it, and even the crowd that looks like it might appeal to, I don't know if they'll be really into it.
The Escape from Tarkov community specifically, that's the main community that... for the genre of the game that they're going for, and if they're not really all too interested, then that doesn't bode well.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well indeed. And again, like I said, that's kind of where it brings us to right at the moment. So, I mean, I'm not surprised, personally speaking. like we said before, Bungie's no stranger when it comes to allegations
Vault
surrounding
security
art theft, but
You know
it
what to
just
do,
feels
Guardian.
weird. We mentioned earlier in the show that there was an apology video they put out. I didn't see the full thing myself. I tried to get it
You
put
were
on the
right,
stream in
Mara.
the description
That
box below,
spawn's
because like I said, I tried to
definitely
get
trying to
everything down there
corrupt
for
the
you guys for
submind,
reference. Unfortunately, they did that as a
some
stream, not
weird
as a
things to
video, and
copy
to
out
my knowledge,
files.
there's no one who recorded just the
Luckily,
video
looks like
itself without any,
Malayaki's rewriting
description
itself
or,
with repair
their
protocols
own
every time we
commentary
clear
over
the
top.
bunker.
So you can
So
probably dig it
damage
up there
is
if you go
minimal.
looking for it, but I
I
unfortunately
suspect
couldn't
the
find
witness
just the
is
pure
treating this
version.
scorn as a living
But from what I
archive,
remember hearing,
copying
it just
important
sounded like your
information
hand
to its
caught in the
mind
cookie
for
jar,
safekeeping.
honestly. Like, it felt extremely
Troubling.
cringe, supposedly. I've seen bits and pieces of it myself, in truth, and I admit it does kind of give off that vibe of just being extremely awkward.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like, there are people who are even calling for the art director to just be canned after something like this, which, I mean, I don't know. I guess there is some truth. Like, there's some level of, like, culpability, I imagine you would have to kind of imagine with this. It's not like, this is not just like an image got lifted here or something like got lifted there, and to blame it all on one rogue employee feels a bit hard to buy. Because like I said, it's very pervasive throughout the entirety of the material surrounding Marathon. Like I said, it's in the trailers, it's in the UI, it's in the animations, it's on the bloody website. All of this is just
there's so
everywhere.
much of it to the point where you cannot truly believe that it's a case of only one person is involved.
Yeah, one person with a texture pack that just nobody happened to check thoroughly. Like, something this thorough would have had to have gone at least to the very top of the art director's desk and sign off for all of this to be done. And, I don't know, call me crazy, but there does feel like some level of, culpability that has to be done there beyond a just apology. I don't know. But what do I know? I'm not in the art field, I guess.
We're not part of the art business.
It just... Yeah, we're not part of the art business. I have a degree in business management, but not a, degree in art stuff, so I don't know. What do I know? But, it's one of those things where it just feels weird. So like I said, this whole business surrounding a delay, I mean, everyone was kind of hoping for a delay, weirdly enough, as is, because it just, I don't know. It feels like it's necessary at this point, just to kind of reevaluate where you are in terms of the game and just scrub the game clear of all that kind of influence from Anti-Real, or at the very least compensate her, or them, excuse me. I keep wanting to say her, because I heard it was a her at some point, but again, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, to hopefully get Anti-Real compensated for all of this stuff, and just kind of go from there. So like I said, it's not surprising hearing that we have a delay coming out of this. I mean, what do you think, Lowell? It's just the whole delay and everything.
That's the thing with the delay, is the question is, what exactly are they going to go and change? Because, like, me and Nick have discussed it, it's like, they're not likely to change much, but if they're going to take so long to have a delay, then they have to be changing something, but what the question is, then what?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? And you're right on that one. Obviously, like I said, they're going to have to scrub all the Anti-Real influence, or at least get some kind of compensation point where they can allow to have that. And, I mean, they've even put out a statement telling, like, they're going to look into, gameplay and stuff like this, and kind of make it better, and, kind of put the whole Bungie charm on it, stuff like that. Which is all just a bunch of corporate speak for we're just going to look the whole thing top down and see what the heck we can fix. Or make better. Yeah. That said, I've also heard there's some influence that's, or not influence, oh my goodness, my brain cannot think of the word right now, excuse me. Criticism that's come actually at the game, or some, suggestions that have come at, Marathon as a whole, supposedly, from what I've heard, don't quote me here, but from what I've heard, that, apparently the higher-ups in Marathon have heard the criticism, but are kind of stuck in their ways. They're like, trust me, bro, it'll work. Which, in light of everything that's happening, I'm not sure if they were all that right on that one, I've always been the hesitant when people come to me and are just, trust me, bro, in terms of reassurance. We've seen that way too much in the games industry, so when someone comes to me and they're like, their great defense is just, trust me, bro, I'm like,
this.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know.
That only really works if it's someone playing the game. Making the game? I don't know about
I mean,
that
even
one.
then, right? Like, we've just heard that too many times in the industry. Don't get me wrong. There are some studios where I might accept that from. Like, there are some studios that genuinely, there are some studios that, to their credit, have learned from things. I mean, look at things like, Cyberpunk and and the guys who made Cyberpunk and The Witcher guys, CD Projekt Red, that's the bloody name. Look at No Man's Sky and Hello Games. There are studios that have learned from their mistakes here, right? But with Bungie, it's just kind of this one continuous string of just,
the same
like scandal,
thing
the scandal, the scandal,
overall.
the scandal. Yeah, it's just kind of been.
It feels like it's the same mistake, just a different coat of paint.
I mean, not even that, if you ask me. It just feels like we're just kind of, hobbling from scandal to scandal at this point. So
Yeah.
when Bungie's like, "Trust me, bro," my first thing is, I don't, I don't.
Kinda
Again, I
hard
could be
to-
proven wrong, and I always hope to be proven wrong in this industry. Like, I want to be proven wrong because, like I said, good things could come out of this. Who knows? Marathon might be enjoyable. I hope it's enjoyable, not only from it's good for, the books standpoint, but also because, I know it's almost feels controversial to say, but, it's good for Bungie at this point, right? Like, say what you will about Marathon, right? Bungie needs to diversify their portfolio somehow. Was it the best move to sink all their money into a bunch of projects that either went nowhere, got offloaded, or has seemingly been cursed from inception in the case of Marathon? You tell me. I
Probably
guess it's
not.
no. Probably not,
It
but
feels
no.
a little too on the nose of the case of eggs in one basket.
Yeah, it does kind of, doesn't it? But, it is that kind of, at end of the day, it is kind of that point of they have to diversify somehow, right? Like, hell, even look at Warframe. Warframe and DE, they constantly get compared, even by streamers, by news articles. Like, there's always some weird connective tissue that's always been put between them in some case or another. And it's always been like somewhat night and day, right? Like, one community is constantly angry at the developers for one reason or another. Again, whether that is a proper reason or not is entirely up to your opinion. I think a good chunk of it is true, but I digress. Look at the other community. In the eyes of Warframe, for the most part, DE has done no wrong. For the most part. And, it's that case of, as a result, these games tend to get compared a lot in terms of, like, look at one, look at the other. And, even in their case, DE is diversifying with things like Soulframe. But in the case of Soulframe, right? Yeah, sure, DE had a lot of projects, but that they got reined in, but at the end of the day, they have enough support and there's enough kind of listening and feedback from the community that it feels like, it's a good thing to diversify. They are diversifying and they're doing it the proper way, but then you kind of look at Marathon and, like I said, if word is to be believed, when they get criticism, their only response is, "Trust me, bro," and kind of look where that's
That
gotten us.
doesn't help.
Yeah, that doesn't really help, right? So, I don't know. Again, Marathon is definitely a good thing from Bungie in terms of a business standpoint, but whether the game actually lands or not, like I said, it almost feels like this game was cursed from its inception. So, we'll see. I'm just going to be looking at this, like I said, and just kind of watching it from the outlines. I really had no interest in if you're interested, myself. I have no real interest in playing Marathon myself, just because I'm not much of an extraction shooter guy, to be honest. I've dabbled with trying them in the past, I've thought about it, but I just never really got around
I'm gonna make
it.
this like a small little point because it is kind of important. A lot of people have like gone and said Helldivers is an extraction shooter. No, it is not. Sure, you extract at the end, but you're doing a mission. An extraction shooter, however, the formula tends to follow the lines of you go to a location, you try to pick up items, and you pick up items that you temporarily will have. If you lose it while you're out, you lose it. That's it. Like, you can very quickly lose your progress in an actual extraction shooter. And that's kind of how extraction shooters work.
If I might just be for 2 seconds there, that is the defensive words of someone who's heard that comparison one too many times.
I have to say it for what it is. Helldivers is not an extraction shooter in the formula that people think it is. And it kind of does need to be known.
Agree, though, truth be told. It's never really sat with me as an extraction shooter. We both play Helldivers, and I honestly don't think it's an extraction shooter.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't entirely, considering how niche extraction shooters can be and how, the formula is still it's still kind of
not
a trendy
too many
thing at this
people
point. Everyone's
play
kind
it, and it's a very niche formula, so I can understand the confusion for it.
Yeah, the confusion, right? But at the end of the day, let's see, like I said, if Helldivers works. Like I said, I've never really played extraction shooters. I've dabbled with the idea in the past, never really got into it because the idea of like here's the thing, I play Souls games. I don't mind constantly throwing myself at a wall. I guess that's the, the masochist in me, if you will.
Yeah.
But the idea of constantly just straight up losing progress every time you, kind of have to reset, I don't know. It just feels like after a certain point it would get demoralizing.
Like, at
And it's
least
already
in a
demoralizing
Souls
at the
game,
Dark Souls.
like, that's the thing. In a Souls game, you're technically always making some level of progress because you're like, alright, I've learned that doing this is probably a bad idea, or the enemy is using this attack sequence, I need to watch out for it. In an extraction shooter, you make a mistake, that's it. You just kind of get your progress reset a little there. Like
I said, there's some people who are interested in that. Me, not so much. Maybe I'll find one day, but I'm not really interested in Marathon, but that's a whole other can of worms.
yeah.
But anyways, that's kind of where we are when it comes to this whole business. That's Marathon, like I said. It's kind of been, in my opinion, cursed from its inception. We've gone from a nuke-worn reception to art scandal to now just a straight-up delay into indefinitum. Ugh, tongue don't tongue. So, yeah. Let's see where we kind of go from here. I'm curious to see where it goes at this point, legitimately. Like I said, I've never been too interested in Marathon as a game itself, because, like I said, not really interested in the game. But I'm more and more curious to see where all of this goes in terms of, like, how all of this will play out. So, there we are. Hope you all enjoyed the video for this week, and it feels like that was a bit of an abrupt ending, but I guess that's just where it is, right?
Yeah.
But, like, comment, subscribe, do your shtick. I admit it's a bit more of a depressing video this week, but it feels like we had to address Marathon at some point, considering everything that's happened. I mean, we've covered Bungie extensively on this channel before, so it feels like we should say something. Probably should say something about the whole business surrounding Destiny 2, but that's another video. We're already at like almost 22 minutes at this point, so I'm just gonna shut up and let you all go. So yeah, have a good one, have a good week. Hopefully there'll be something more interesting and hopefully happier next week. See you all later, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.